Hey everybody, it's Jody Ewing with the Mary Ellen Van Nocken team, and I'm back with another video about chickens. Today we're going to talk about getting started raising baby chickens. Baby chicks are tons of fun, they're super cute, and if you want to bond with your chickens, I really think it's the best way to start. And if you have kids, it's so fun for your kids. So before you get started and you bring your baby chicks home, you've got to have everything set up and ready to go. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you're going to get yourself ready to bring those baby chicks home. And if you remember from my last video, you can find baby chicks through mail order hatcheries, through local breeders in your area, and stores like Tractor Supply will oftentimes have chicks in the springtime where you can go pick your own. So however you are planning on purchasing your baby chicks, you just want to have everything ready to go when they get to your house. So the first thing you're going to need to decide is how many chicks you're going to bring home, and then you're going to choose a brooder that is an appropriate size for that number of chicks. For instance, our first flock, we brought home 4 or 5 chicks, and we just put them in a storage bin with tall sides that you might find at Target or Home Depot. We realized pretty quickly that we were going to need something bigger because they do grow quickly and you don't want them to be overly crowded. They will indiscriminately walk all over each other. So you want them to have plenty of space to move away from excited chickens. And when they start growing and hopping, you want to make sure that they've got the space to do that. So you can start in that little storage bin, or you can build your own. There's lots of brooder plans online that you can find for building your own brooder. I have heard of some people turning rabbit hutches into brooders. We actually took a plastic storage closet from our garage and laid it flat and took the doors off, and that's what we used. And it was really big, so we had plenty of room there. So once you figure out how big you want your brooder to be and you go ahead and get that ready to be set up, the next thing you're going to want to put in your brooder is the flooring. I recommend pine shavings in the floor of your brooder. It can only be pine. You can never use cedar because there's an aromatic in the cedar shaving that is not good for chickens of any age. Chickens have pretty sensitive respiratory systems, and so you have to make sure you don't have anything that's giving off a heavy fragrance. So pine shavings, you can find them at PetSmart, Tractor Supply, local feed stores. And once you have that down in the flooring of your brooder, your chicks will have a safe place to walk around. You want to avoid any slippery surface, even like newsprint or magazine, because their little legs are so fragile that slippery surfaces make it difficult for them to walk, and they can develop some problems with their legs on those kinds of surfaces. So I just recommend sticking with a pine shaving. So you have your brooder, you have your flooring in there, and the next thing you need to provide is a heat source. When eggs are hatched and there's a mama hen to hatch them, the mama hen keeps them warm. And so because you don't have that mama to keep them warm, you need to provide the warmth for them. The feathers that little baby chicks have do not provide any warmth. And so I recommend only using a radiant warmer in your brooder because there's no fire hazard risk with a radiant warmer. So what is a radiant warmer? It basically looks kind of like a box with 2 sides and a top and no bottom and no back. And the top sits up about 6 inches off the floor, and your chicks can go underneath it when they want warmth. It works by creating electromagnetic waves that push the warmth down, but they only activate when something interrupts the wave by going underneath the warmer. So when the chicks are under, it will warm up, and you can slide your hand under and feel that it's warm. And when they come out, it will cool off under there. The other option you may have heard of, or you may read about, are heat lamps. And it's generally recommended by almost all chicken farmers and backyard chicken raisers that you don't use a heat lamp because it's a huge fire hazard. So you can find radiant warmers online, and they're great. Your chickens will go underneath when they need warmth, and then they'll come out when they're feeling warm enough and they want to play or eat and drink. So make sure your warmer is on one end of your brooder and there's a space in the rest of the brooder where they can be away from the warmth. So you've got your warmth, you have your flooring, you've got your container, and now you need a place to put their food. So when you're looking for food containers for chicks, I recommend trying to stick to containers that have smaller openings for them to stick their beaks down in and get their food. The reason being is chicks are very messy and they will walk all in their food, which means they will poop in their food. And then you find yourself constantly cleaning out yucky food or throwing it away. So there are lots of shapes of chick feeders online. We had a long rectangular one and it had openings on both sides of it. So plenty of room for the chicks to get to their food. Now that you've got a place for your food, you'll want to think about a container for your water. And like I said, chicks are very messy and they have no problem walking in water, which means they're going to poop in the water. So I recommend using a closed container that has a poultry tip on it. And it kind of looks similar to like a hamster waterer. And that way the chicks don't walk in their water at all. They learn to, you'll have to kind of show them where their water is by touching their beaks to the poultry tip. But they'll learn to get the water from that container and it keeps it nice and fresh and clean. So you've got your container, your heat, your flooring, your food, your water, and now you got to give your chicks a little entertainment. So I always recommend putting a roosting bar in your brooder. Like I said, chicks are very active, and as they grow, they're going to practice hopping and flapping their wings. And the roosting bar gives chicks, a place to practice hopping up and roosting, and also it creates a little more space off the floor so that if you've got some chicks that are running around and being crazy, there's a little place to elevate, when the other chicks want to get out of the way. So you can build your own. We even just nailed a stick from the yard onto some 2x4s and put that in our brooder, but there's some fun ones online as well. So we've got everything set up for our chicks, and now we want to make sure we've got food for them when they get there. Chicks need to start eating what's called a chick starter feed. One, the protein levels are appropriate for chicks. They don't need as much protein as when they are laying eggs. They will need a higher protein as they get older. So the protein level is appropriate, and the crumble is very small, so it's easy for them to actually eat the feed. As chicks get older, the crumbles become more like pellets. So those are going to be too big for the baby chicks. So chick starter, and then you have to decide for yourself if you want to use a medicated chick starter or a non-medicated. I generally used medicated starters across the board. Some people want to use a very natural and organic feed and it won't have any medication in it. The reason that people tend to use a medicated chick starter is to prevent a disease called coccidiosis, which is very common at any point during a chicken's life, but most especially when they're immature and they're chicks. So the medication that's in a medicated feed will help prevent coccidiosis. If your chickens are vaccinated, some people feel they don't need the medicated feed. So that's a personal preference, and you may want to do a little reading about the two. So you've chosen your feed, you've got your waterer, you bring your chickens home, you put them in the brooder, and then you might ask yourself, what do we do now? Can we play with them? How much can we do with them when they're really little? So I think holding chicks from the very beginning, often during the day, is a wonderful way to acclimate them to being handled by humans, but also to create a bond with your chickens. It's especially wonderful for the kids. They're so cute. My kids used to put them in their laps and watch TV and cuddle them. Your hands are nice and warm, so that provides warmth for the chicks. Just keep in mind that they are super fragile when they're little, and so you would obviously need to be mindful of smaller children, younger children, and how they are holding those baby chicks. So yes, hold your chicks, bond with your chicks when they're really little. As they get older, you'll have more opportunity to do fun things like take them outside. Chicks cannot maintain their own warmth. Their feathers won't do that. And so you will notice as your chick gets older, they're going to start to get what I call big girl feathers, and they're going to look like chicken feathers. And when they're almost fully feathered in those big girl feathers, you can start putting them outside in the yard and letting them explore the grass. You'll just want to make sure that you've got a nice containment system for that so that they can't run off in your yard, and that they're protected from predators, because even a large full-size chicken is at risk for hawks and foxes, etc., or neighborhood dogs even. So you would never want to leave your young chickens out in the yard unattended unless your area was fully protected. You may need to increase the size of your brooder as well. And the one thing that you will pretty quickly need to add to your brooder is a lid. Now, obviously you don't want it to be a solid lid. What we used was 1/4 inch hardware cloth, and we cut it to the shape of our brooder and then cut out a little area so the waterer could hang down for the chickens to get their water. And then we taped the edges of our hardware cloth with electrical tape so that we weren't getting cut or snagged with the metal. That gave the chickens a safe place to hop up and not escape their brooder, and plenty of ventilation as well. So just be prepared to possibly increase the size of your brooder while the chickens are growing. So that might make you ask, how long do chicks need to be in a brooder? Well, there's 2 things that you would want to consider. One, are your chickens fully feathered and can they keep themselves warm outside? And 2, the enclosure that you have prepared for them outside, are they safe in there? So if you have hardware cloth with a larger opening, they may be able to fit through the opening in the fence. And if that's the case, you may lose your chickens. So you want to make sure that they are safe out there and that they can get in and out of their coop safely, but more importantly, that they're fully feathered and can keep themselves warm. Typically that's around 12 weeks in a nice climate like Georgia. So that's about all you need really to get started with chicks, and they're tons of fun. It's fun to be able to watch them change. They really each have their own personality, and we loved hand raising our baby chicks. So I hope you enjoyed this video and have a great time.